Welcome, Gilda. We're going to bring you in. What a good day to discuss corporate governance, a day that the whole, many nations in Africa are talking about change and all sorts of things, people picketing. So Nancy Mora, if you're there and ready, you can share with us some poem to enlighten us.
Yes. Good morning. It's a beautiful morning. Today I'm going to do something small on a road traveled less. Yes, sometimes we choose to take a road that has trails, but sometimes you have to choose to take a road that is less traveled. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I'm just one. I could not travel both. I'm just one traveler, so I just long stood. I looked down as far as I could to where the bend and where the undergrowth was. Then I took the other one, just the fair one, just the less traveled one. And having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy, it wanted water, there was nowhere, though as far as that for passing there, it had warned them really about the same. And both morning equally lay. There was mist, the road that was less traveled. On the leaves I stepped, I had trodden the black leaves. I kept on one first step, then the other, then the next one. It was scary. I feared it was the road less traveled. I doubted if I could ever come back. I doubted where I was going, but I believed I was going somewhere. Maybe I should have taken a map. Yes, I had a map. It was the road that was less traveled. I knew where I was going, but I didn't have trails. Somewhere, someplace, edges and edges, maybe somebody traveled there. There were two roads diverging, and then I met my destination. Yes, I took the road less traveled, but I reached my destination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy Mora. That poem, the original version, I loved so much. Two roads less traveled. I think I wrote it somewhere as well. And behold, I took the one less traveled. Two roads into yellow wood. Jeremy, I know you know that poem, and maybe you could relate with it and say something about it. Good to see you in the morning. Good. Now today, just before we introduce the speaker, I have two quotes. One is from Pope Francis about this thing called corporate governance. He says, every man, every woman who has to take up the service of government must ask themselves two questions. Do I love my people in order to serve them better? Am I humble? And do I listen to everybody, to diverse opinions in order to choose the best path? If you don't ask those two questions, your governance will not be good. Yes. But then there is one I love most, called most from Jesus Christ. It's called, it said, by their fruits you will know them. By their fruits you will know them. And so people can talk, and people can spread their policies, whatever. But by the end of the day, you don't see the fruits that correspond to their claim, then it boils to nothing. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today. Today, Gilda Odera. I've known Gilda for a good number of years, probably like 7 or thereabout, and we've been good friends. Now, Gilda has over 28 years experience in diversified and innovative visionary leader with vast experience in building networks and partnerships and business strategy, proven track record in entrepreneurship, executive management, governance, strategic planning, public policy, advocacy, building partnerships, and executive talent recruitment. Gilda has over 15 years of board experience in health, public procurement, higher education, and labor sectors, and has chaired finance and executive board committees in public and private organizations. Presently, consulting under all about marketing limited, a company offering various advisory and consulting services for startups and mid-sized companies. Passionate about transforming lives and working in environments where she can bring in her expertise. She considers herself a great link between the private sector and government, having had extensive experience in both. She's a specialist. She specializes in leadership, social entrepreneurship, boards, policy advisory, and governance. She's held several positions in both private organizations and public boards, and at present holds the position of the first female deputy national president of the board of the Federation of Kenya Employers since its inception over 60 years ago, demonstrating strong leadership. Gilda is a pioneer on many fronts, willing to explore new opportunities, having pioneered businesses in both marketing services and the ICT industry. Board experience, first Vice President, Federation of Kenya Employers, board member, University Funds Board, panel member, Health Reform Panel of Experts, Kenya, a board member, Public Procurement Administration Review, board director, National Health Insurance Fund, Kenya, council member, Kenya National Quality Authority, and many others. Now, who is best placed to discuss with us about this other than Gilda? And we are grateful that you got an opportunity. I know it's a tall order waking up in the morning and you complain. But thank you very much. You are not alone. Even Martha here was complaining. So, so thank you very much. Welcome. Let's hear what you have for us.
Good morning. Good morning, all
Good
and
morning.
everybody.
Good morning.
I am glad to be here this morning. Paul is teasing me because he knows me a little bit. But I am, when we were getting married many years ago, and being counseled 32 years ago, the pastor then, the reverend then, was telling us that he was teaching us that some people are like gas. You just light the match and the flame comes on immediately. And some people are like a slow cooker, a hot plate. You switch it on and then it warms up. But when it gets really hot, it takes time for it to cool down. So you can decide which one you are. I know which one I am. Now, I'm glad to be here this morning talking about one of my favorite topics, corporate governance. Corporate governance is something that, and I hope I'm audible enough, corporate governance is something that cuts across every life. It affects every single life. When we say corporate governance, because of the word corporate, we tend to think of a corporate organization. And I know a lot of you here maybe are thinking in that way. So I'm going to touch in that area as well. Because when we say corporate governance, many people tend to think of this big organization. Corporate governance is for them. I'm a MSME or an SME. That's not for us. We are just two employees. So really, but I want to learn. But I'll correct that to say that corporate governance is for each and every one of us, as long as you belong somewhere. you need to understand and embrace corporate governance and be a corporate governance champion. Now, there are various definitions of corporate governance, and I'll only touch on one, just off the cuff, just as an introduction. I don't like being too academic. I don't believe we are academic class here, Peter. I want to talk.
That's it.
So, yes, I don't want to be academic. But then when you have to describe corporate governance, there are certain words that come up when you talk about corporate governance. Structure is a structure, and systems, rules, practices, and processes. Those 5 words define what corporate governance is. It's the structure, systems, rules, practices, processes by which an organization is directed, controlled, or held accountable. But there are 4 things we can narrow down to remember. So wherever you go, if somebody says corporate governance, just remember, it involves people. It involves people, it involves purpose, it involves the process, it involves performance. Those are the 4 ways, we call it the 4 P's of corporate governance. The 4 P's of corporate governance, just remember that bit: people, process, performance, purpose. Now, for a long time, corporate governance was not taken as seriously. And after the Enron times, the collapse of Enron, those of you who know about the Enron story, some of you know it better than I. But in the US, then there was a lot of things that started being put in place, and accountability put in place for corporate organizations. Because you found that at the end of the day, we're all human beings, whether black, white, some people say brown, yellow, wherever we come from, we're all human beings. And I think a lot of you here may be Christians, some are not, but whatever belief that you follow, beliefs always encourage good behavior. And we all know, those of us who are Christians, that man is fallen. And sin has corrupted our minds from the time of Adam. And so as corrupt as we are, no matter where we are or who we are, unless there are systems, you find that people look for shortcuts. And even when there are systems, unless there are rules, people will always want to go about things their own way, even when there are rules. How many times do we see the matatus driving on these borders that send me nuts on the wrong side of the road, and you're always almost having accidents? So it is just human nature to try bending rules, our practices, So that's why you find that corporate governance is important in any organization, so that we try to put all these hurdles and obstacles and not make it very easy for things to collapse. It cultivates a culture of integrity. That's why it's necessary. A culture of integrity, so that there can be good performance and a proper society and environment wherever one is, so that you can achieve your goals. For instance, as an SME, you may have your 2 people working for you, but you still put the systems. It doesn't matter how basic they are. That's corporate governance for you. You're putting in the process. You say, you talk to your person when you're not in, the person who you leave in charge of your kiosk or your small shop, whatever it is. You're telling them, this is the receipt. When the customer comes, you must write like this. You must file it like this. You must indicate this like this. If this is the stock for today, you have to open. We have to know that this is how we started. At the end, this is how we are closing. You're the one responsible for this. If there's anything, you're the one I'm going to ask. That's accountability. And those things I'm talking about, that is process. So that at the end of the day, there is performance. You want to see that at the end of the day, you got your money. It's not that somebody's saying they can't account for where did those 4 tabs of Blue Band go in your shop. There was no system put in place, and now nobody knows who went to the store or who went to the cupboard where you keep the extras to remove. I'm just bringing it down to that basic level for us, just to show that it starts from down there and then grows in the same way. That's the same principle in a large organization. The 3 pillars, corporate governance has various pillars. It started off with 3 pillars, moved to 5, and then to 7 over the years. But I'll start with the 3 core. Transparency, accountability, which is what I've talked about. And then people say security. Because without transparency, there's chaos. We'll keep asking, who did this? Why? We don't know how this happened. This is not going on fairly. So we have to be transparent. That's one of the things that corporate governance, the pillars. If I add 2 more so that there are 5 pillars, you'll add responsibility and impartiality. Impartiality can also be, you can also use the word fairness, because you're impartial, so you're fair. If I add 2 more so that there are 7 pillars, then I would add leadership. Ethical leadership, not just leadership, because there's all types of leadership, including dictatorial, that is not very good in corporate governance. So I'd add ethical leadership, and then the stakeholder management. So those are the 7 pillars that corporate governance stands on. And if I might this morning, I'll just highlight a few, just go a bit, deeper in some of them as we discuss and talk. As I said, I don't want to be so academic. But as I started saying earlier, before I go deeper, we know that in every place, as I said, in your organization, if you're an SME, it is you and your 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people. Anne is asking me, are they mentioned in order? No, I've not put them in order. But I would look at it and say, just to talk, to answer Martha. Martha is asking, are they in order? I would not say I've read them in order, but this is what I'd say. Ethical leadership. If you ask me as Gilda, I'll put that as number 1 in corporate governance. And why do I put it as number 1? And we can have a debate on this after this. Maybe some of you may think something different, and it will be good to bring me to your side or you to my side. But the reason why I think ethical leadership is number 1, you see, the fish rots from the top. That's what I always say. The fish, and there's that saying, and I agree with that saying, the fish rots from the head. So if the head, the leadership, has no ethics, and so you don't have ethical leadership, how would you have the right people in your organization? How would you have transparency if the person at the top is so unethical? If they're unethical, most likely they're not very transparent in what they do. How would we have accountability if the person at the top has no ethics, so they do whatever they feel like? So for me, that is why I would put, to answer Martha, I would put ethical leadership at the top. And then I would put transparency. Why would I put transparency? Because I would put transparency because in a transparent organization, you see everything. Transparent means it's like a glass. There's nothing hidden. There's no cards being played under the table. There's no funny games going on. Everybody is aware of what is happening. It is transparent. And everybody is aware of what is happening within their scope. Remember that there are different players, which I'm just about to mention when it comes to corporate governance. So you don't have to know what does not belong to you. If you're in the board, let's talk about key players in a corporation. Because I'm still answering Martha down, and we're going to go down along the way. You'll pick as I write and say, my number 3 is now this. So number 2 is transparency. And this is what I say when I say in a corporate organization, the players are at the top there, the board. Then there's the stakeholders. Then there's management. Now, if there's no transparency from the board to the stakeholders on what the organization is doing, because the board reports to the stakeholders. Let's take, for example, a parastatal. Let's talk about NHIF for the sake of it. I've just picked it. I sat in that board at one point, and you all know the dramas that happen in that board over and over again. I won't talk about them now, but I'm just picking that as an example to say, you are stakeholders. Anybody who subscribes to NHIF is a stakeholder. Now, if there is no transparency with what is going on in NHIF, in terms of we've paid these amounts, how much does NHIF collect from their subscription? You know, when I sat in that board, when we first joined, there never used to be a statement put out every year showing how it has performed. Then we introduced that in the second term. The second board that came in, because I did 2 terms, introduced that, and we put it in the papers, and we were doing that. Accountability to the subscribers, because when you're going, some people are saying they're denied access, or you see stories in the newspapers, and you're a stakeholder, you get annoyed because you went to Mbagathi and you're being told that you have to go and pay for MRI somewhere else, and you're wondering why you paid for this. So there's got to be transparency between the board and the stakeholders. But there's also got to be transparency between the management to the board, because the board sits in a boardroom. And that's why many times the board needs to get out. Part of corporate governance, get out from the boardroom and go out there and see what is going on. Not just sit in a board and you don't know what's happening in the hospitals. Walk and see, even do those mystery. There was a time we even did those mystery patients, and it was a horror. Some of the things we discovered in some places were horrors. Because if you just sit in the boardroom and just receive things, the management will bring to you what they want to bring. But is it transparent? So that's why, to me, transparency, and we'll still continue going deep on that issue of transparency. Transparency is my number 2, as I answer Martha, and I thank Martha for that question. Accountability, I would put as number 3. Because, as I've just mentioned, the board is accountable to the stakeholders. Management is accountable to the board. Accountability is what makes one have to be transparent. In fact, maybe it's the other way around, but you guys will pick them and then we'll rearrange them. Because if you're not accountable to anyone, will you even want to be, do you feel you need to be transparent on anything? So you have to be accountable. Maybe in accountability is even number 2. You know, as I'm talking, it is coming out. Because we are accountable. You must be accountable to someone in that organization. You're given a budget. You are in PR department. You were supposed to get all these branding items. Who are you accountable to? You must be accountable. How many t-shirts did you say you were producing? Why were those t-shirts costing 1,200? And yes, they're supposed to, you can even get them at 350 each. So that then there can be questions on how transparent was this process. So accountability, in fact, I think I would rearrange them, 2 and 3. I would put in the stakeholder management, which falls in there. And I think the other 3, I will want us as a team to see how we want to arrange them, so that I don't spend so much time on how to arrange them. But stakeholder management is important in corporate governance. If you do not manage your stakeholders, your organization will crumble. If today there's an uproar, say in the same institution I talked about or any other, and you don't manage the satisfaction of your stakeholders, you can guess what will happen. You'll either lose all your subscriptions because there's no transparency. They don't see what's being done with their money. And so you go down. And you know, as Paul said this morning, which I'll touch on along the way as I go on, is that's why some children are home today. They didn't go to school. Because there are some stakeholders who are asking tough questions and they want answers. So the way they are managed will determine how the organization continues. So stakeholder management is important. Now your stakeholders may be relying on rumors that that particular organization, whichever parastatal or corporate organization, could be private sector. There are always rumors. We must know that, you know, especially with social media, rumors, fake news. So how do you manage that within your corporate governance? So you can't ignore certain things. And that is why that transparency comes in. It's tied with stakeholder management. Because if you're not able to manage your stakeholder, the organization then gets into a crisis mode. And that's a very dangerous place to be. Now, let me just go a bit deeper in these aspects. There's responsibility. Now, responsibility represents stakeholders' interests. That's what responsibility is. Why are you there as an organization? That's your responsibility. And you could have started as a private company. So you think, well, I can do what I want to do. It is my business. But sorry, the moment you have gone public with your business, it has become public. It's not a Gilda Odera affair, because it means I am engaging with the public. The public is buying from me, my services. They want value for their money. I have presented a certain thing to them, and I have to be held accountable to what I said I will do. So if I am, for instance, a marketing services company, I cannot say that now I have nothing, it is my business. I now have a responsibility to the public because company A took services, maybe I procured from them something and I have not paid them. Or some people in my organization have conned people and now my organization's name is out there that this organization lacks integrity. So you can't, that becomes a responsibility to the public. So it doesn't matter that you are a two-man shop or whatever it is. One of the aspects is responsibility in corporate, a pillar in corporate governance. You are responsible to those who you serve. You're responsible to your stakeholders. You're accountable to them, and you have a responsibility to manage their interests. That's your responsibility. In terms of fairness or impartiality, that's really to address an avenue to address any violations. And we see this all the time. I'm going to talk about challenges in all these. We see this all the time. For instance, if there's no framework, and if you're going to pick me, you'll realize the way I'm talking, I may not use those words, but remember the words I talked about in the beginning: people, process, performance, purpose. So when now we talk about challenges that we find, And there was a question that I was told to talk about this as you talk about corporate governance, where we go wrong. So I'm tying all that together. For instance, if there is no framework for recruitment in an organization, because all organizations recruit people who work in that organization and serve in that organization. An organization cannot run without people. Now, in corporate governance, good corporate governance, what is the process in place to put in place these people? What is the process for selection of the people who are to work in your organization? What is the process of appointing these people, if at all it is appointment in for example, a parastatal? What is the process of inducting your employees in a corporate organization? You have just gotten in, maybe the head of department for finance or whatever. What is the process? Is there a framework? And that is why, if you remember the definition, those words came up: structure, system, process. It all ties in to what could go wrong. You don't have that in place, things will go wrong. And let me tell you how things go wrong when I now talk about recruitment. For example, who is the recruiting agency or the recruiting person in your organization? How did you select that agency in the first place? Maybe if you're a big corporate organization, there must be a process of how to recruit the recruiting agency. In government, it's procurement. You just don't do it anyhow. There's a process you have to follow, get the procurement. But you know, there's something I always find interesting. These processes are there, but it's like it's a human nature to spend time seeing how to beat the process. So you follow the process and procure, but what does one do? Go and look for some friends who have recruitment agencies to come and tender, and then get the people who are in the panel recruiting or selecting. Already you find some of them are biased. So what's the missing word there? That word I started with at the beginning, ethics. When I said ethical leadership. Because if you don't have ethical leadership, then all these processes, really, they come to naught. The process exists that you're supposed to, for instance, tender if you're government. And you're supposed to competitively select the best, lowest evaluated tender, bidder. Now, government processes are different from private sector. Private sector may just say, we want to talk to so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, let's give them our request for this, and they give you a quotation. So it varies. But is it value for money? Is it value for money? And that's where the accountability that I spoke about still comes back in. Is it value for money? The other challenge that you find is lack of understanding of roles. In a board, I don't know how many of you here may be in a board, and if you're not, you will still sit in a board at some point or other. Does one understand what they're even doing there in the first place? What is your role in the board in the first place? Why are you there? Sorry, I think I pressed this button. Why are you in the board? Do you understand what you're supposed to be doing in that position? And if it is not a board, remember, management reports to a board. So even within management, do you even understand your work? Or did you get that job with Joanna, the typical Kenyan thing? Let me get Kenyan here. You just get the job. First of all, that certificate was bought. And then some friend, uncle, relative, friend, whoever, puts you in the job which you don't even qualify. And then the nightmare begins in the organization. Because the leadership at the top was not ethical and brought you in, and you can't even perform and nobody can touch you. I'm sure many of you may have such stories in your organizations. I don't know. There's some untouchables who can't deliver, but they're there. The other thing, as I said, is now when it comes to challenges, I'm talking about boards first, but sometimes I may just talk general. Inadequate induction of board members. Board members do not understand the organization. There is no way you can run an organization well. You cannot even understand the papers that come before you, because you don't even know what the organization is supposed to be doing, so that you challenge management that when it comes to this, why are we doing this way? When we look at our strategic plan, how are we doing? Are we in line? We have a 5-year plan. We are midway. Where are we at? Why haven't we accomplished this? Now, if you don't even know what a strategic plan is, how can you even question anything when it comes to a board meeting with management and with the senior management staff? And so that's why I remember at the beginning we said selection and appointment. You know, there have been cases where you find, and I like to just call a spade, nothing personal. I don't care whether it is this current government, the previous, or the previous, or whatever. But there have been cases, many across the board over years, where you find people sitting in a board, coming in for a board meeting, do not even read the board papers before they come in, have no clue. They don't even understand. There was a time I was somewhere and there's a lady who came to that place and I was shocked. She sat there and said, I don't know these things. And I don't know, what do I start? So what is she doing there? But she was selected to come and sit there in a very critical place, never understanding, and then sitting there looking bored and saying she doesn't know. Now these things, what does this mean? How does she even read these things? And then she closes the file and she's staring at us like this. You know, and then we expect an organization to run properly with such representation. But where did that start? How was that person selected to sit in a critical board like that? And you know, it doesn't have to be a big parastatal board. I never like downplaying anything anyone does. Call it a primary school. Call it a board of governors. What do they call them in the primary schools or in secondary schools? It doesn't matter. In a rural school somewhere, it doesn't matter. It is still important. What impact are those people making to make that school better for that locality? That's the primary school in that place. And then they went and brought some funny people to sit in that board. No wonder those schools cannot proceed to even do better than they could. And there are people who are capable, but you're just not bringing in the right people. So, you know, it is so important that the right people are put in place with the right skills. And the skills should always cut across. Because no matter where you are in any organization, and that is why you'll always find HR department, you'll find the finance department, you'll find the technical expertise, if it is a health thing, if it is a mechanical thing, if it is a technical, the person now who's relevant to that particular technical expertise needed in that field for that organization, we must have the right skill set. Because when we don't get the right skill set, no wonder we just don't get out of the situation where we are. And I want to talk about the country. I mean, look at where we are. Honestly, I'm very passionate about this because it is corporate governance and we have failed. We have failed. You and I. And why do I say you and I? Because when it comes to your person, it is okay. You know, in John Githongo's, It's Our Turn to Eat. And I remember Maina Kiai, I think, once saying something like, for most people, and I've said most, not all, because I still believe there's hope, and I still believe there are some good people out there who mean well for their organizations and for this country. But for most, it depends what direction the gravy train is going. If it's coming your way, suddenly corporate governance is out of the window. Suddenly processes are not followed. It's okay, we can cut this corner and do this. Suddenly it's okay, even if the performance is going to be affected because you got the wrong person on the job, you turn it the other side. It's now okay because that's your person. Suddenly you don't care about the purpose and the mission of that organization because it's your person. The gravy is coming your way. So you don't care as long as it's your person. But that is so short-sighted because at the end of the day, the whole organization crumbles. And when it crumbles, you and I partake of that crumbling. And if I talk about, for instance, corporate governance now in our context in Kenya as the organization, that is why we're where we are today. Because it's me, myself, and I. Processes are there. The structure exists. The systems exist. The right people exist. And Kenyans are so well-educated. Kenyans are so enterprising. My goodness, Kenyans are such achievers. Kenyans just don't have opportunity to do what they'd love to do and earn what they really deserve to earn. But all those structures, the definition I gave you, let me remind you, it's this, what is corporate governance? It's the structure and systems of rules. We have the rules. Practices, we have very bad practices. Processes by which an organization is directed, controlled, and held accountable. And so when every other organization starts crumbling in the country, whether private sector or public sector, because we have not followed due process, we are the victim. When your company collapses today, you're jobless. And when you're jobless, if you're a man and your wife, maybe you're the breadwinner, so your wife, your family are in trouble. Your school fees for your children is suddenly not there. And then what's happening? Conflict between husbands and wives. Wives stressed that the man doesn't have the job. Man stressed, maybe wife cannot help him, also can't earn anything. Also, you two of you can come together to give your children a better life. So there's poor performance, but where did it start? Do we ever ask ourselves, where does it start? It starts with bad corporate governance. I'm answering Paul's question, where do we go wrong? Bad corporate governance. I'm bringing it home so that you don't look at it that it is something for the office and then you behave differently in the office and you behave differently as a Kenyan citizen. Kenya is our organization. Now, let's talk about the control. I want to go deeper here. The control environment for good corporate governance. Number one, integrity and ethical values. Number one. You know, if each of you here, or whoever will listen to this recording, could make that decision to say, and I really love it that you read that point, because it really resonates with what I was talking about today. If each and every one of us could make that decision to say we will take that less traveled road, the one where people don't look for shortcuts, the one that is harder to walk through because the grass is grown this high because it's less traveled. But you're paving the way, pave the way. If each and every one of us could not doubt ourselves, because I was taking down some of the things she was reading in the poem. She says, I took the less traveled because it was grassy. It was scary. That's what she read. Yes, good corporate governance can be scary. I personally have gone through various situations when I'm seen as a lone ranger, because it's not very easy to stand your ground and be the only one saying this is wrong and I don't think I can go with it. You see, most of the time, the reason why there's bad corporate governance, it's not because the processes, as I said, are not there. It's not because the systems are not there. It's not because the structure is not there. It's because we put down our ethics and we look at the people across the table and we don't want to be the only one on that less traveled road. Because you think it's scary. You think you're going to be isolated. You think everybody's going and saying it's okay. So you join the bandwagon, even when you know it is wrong. And so thank you for that poem, because you read in the poem that you met and you reached your destination. And so that means there's hope. So integrity and ethical values, it comes with a price. Integrity comes with a price. And you have to be ready to pay it. You see, you can't say you want good change or real change and you're not ready to pay the price. It means you may be alone. It means you may be branded. But that is a number one for control environment for good corporate governance. Number two, commitment to competence. And that's why earlier, I remember I was telling you that, one turns the blind eye, and maybe quietly, wherever you are, we've all been guilty or so, because when the grave is coming aside, you're not even caring now that your son, your daughter, your friend does not qualify for that job. Or even you just want that job. So you're ready to even pay the recruitment agency. You're ready to do this and that, because you're the beneficiary. But you must be committed to competence. Management style and philosophy, I think I've touched, because the leadership has got to be ethical leadership. But the management style has got to encourage good corporate governance. If your style is right, you stand for the right thing, you follow the processes. Organizations, by the way, all good organizations, and they're all there, they're all very good on paper. They have policies, very good policies, they exist. And those policies are there to guide us. But do we follow? There's human resource policies which really touch on all these things I'm talking about. I'm even seeing I've already reached 8 o'clock. So let me try and wrap up very quickly, Paul, so people can talk. So corporate governance is at the heart of what goes wrong in an organization. In our organization in Kenya today, I call it our organization, we are stakeholders. We cannot just keep looking the other way and wishing and hoping that it will vanish and disappear. We're stakeholders. We're the ones who recruit, select, and appoint a lot of the people, the leaders. It is us. But it becomes mtu wetu. Rather than looking at competence. Remember, I just talked about commitment to competence. And then when things go bust, Who do we blame? You know, we have to look at ourselves before we start pointing fingers. Who do we blame for the mess? And how do we change things? Because, you know, it's only now, and as I said, when it crumbles, when the organization crumbles, that's when we feel the pain. When we can't pay fees, when there's no food on the table, when you go and you cannot afford to buy a packet of unga. But how did it get there? Were people turning the other way because the gravy was coming their side and it was okay? Until it now gets too deep. The pinch has now come to every Kenyan. Before it was okay because it's only a few who are feeling the pinch. But now every Kenyan is feeling the pinch because of bad corporate governance. And this bad corporate governance did not start today. It didn't start today. So what are the forces driving corporate governance? Number one.
Yeah, we have like 6 or so minutes.
Yeah, I'm actually there. I'll be done in 3 minutes or so. So corporate failures, I've talked about that. That's what happens in the end. Separation, I don't want to repeat myself. The fight against corruption is one of the things that is there, not just in this country, but across. I think that's why you're seeing all these countries having these things, and then organizations collapsing because of corruption. Poor quality things purchased, you know. The facts, well-managed organizations have good risk management, and they improve on financial stability, and they're well prepared for crisis. If you have good corporate governance, that's what you will see. That's what you will see. In long and short, if we get rid of a poor culture, if we get back to that road and have good ethical behavior, if we look at ourselves and not say the other person is corrupt, the police are corrupt, but you're the one who bribes them. Or the person in your organization you bribe to get the tenders, but you take the money and then you say they're corrupt. If we can get rid of these and have integrity and have good ethical behavior, we'll have done a lot in putting in place good corporate governance. Paul, I think you can see I'm very passionate about this, and I think I'll stop there.
Yes, Gilda. You know, actually, some people have done me a side chat saying, I think because of time, we need to give her another time, another Monday to proceed because we do not want to cut it. But you were telling me this is too early for you. You don't see yourself coming back. So I said we will talk and hear what she can say.
I can come back another time because I really want us to all come on the same side on this less traveled road together. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much. Yes. Nyambura, you heard that. I said I will ask. Yeah, thank you, Georgina. Yes, Georgina is responding. Yeah, so any 1 or 2 reactions or a comment question, because I know we are running out of time, and then I think we can close in good time. Yes, Jane, good to hear from you. Jane has been at the thick of it in the University of Nairobi. Yeah. And she's seen it all. Yes. Yes, Techno, this Techno has no name, Techno Mobile Limited, Techno. We need another moment with Gilda. Yeah, so people are saying they need another moment. Now I'd like to, let me just enable the unmuting because some people were unmuting themselves immaturely. Anybody who has a reaction, you can unmute and say it. something inspired to me. This is perhaps one of the best I ever had from the time we started this program.
I can say it's been very inspiring and in time, what she's talked about, even with the situation we're in, but more so because I'm passionate for families. I'm seeing structure and ways to just raise proper families. I think the family is an organization as well. If you run it like this, we'll get it right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You're true. You're right in that. It's every organization from the family, and I love that you broke it to SME. You know, most times when we hear corporate, we think of entities like Safaricom. We think of Kenya Airways. Yes, we don't think of our small organizations, and then bringing the country to the picture. Gilda, by the way, for your information, most times we have people across Africa and even beyond Africa, but I hope
Okay.
all of them are able to relate. Yes, we have a
Okay.
lady here, Jennifer Moyo from South Africa, where they're also going to picket today. Yeah, for the same reason of where we go wrong in corporate governance. Thank you very much.
Well, I saw a question. Well, I saw a question by Olale, and maybe I could quickly answer it. He asked
yes.
on the chat. He asked on the chat, why do our local family and big corporations, Akamba, EAI, and Nakumatt collapse while foreign ones like Mercedes-Benz are getting bigger? Okay, East Africa Industries didn't collapse, it just became Unilever. But I hear you, look at the task keys and all that. And to answer that, it is the same thing I've been talking about. The accountability, the transparency. And remember what I mentioned when it came to recruitment and lack of transparency on that and bringing in your people, even when they're not competent. It plays a big role. Because unlike the others you talked about, you're comparing it to the Mercedes-Benz and the rest. If you're going to run your organization professionally, and that's the weakness we have, maybe I start my business and then I bring my cousin, my brother, but they don't have what they can bring into the business to improve it. That's where our issue is. I would put it that way. I'd answer that question that way. And then we don't follow those processes and structures.
Thank you very much. I've taken a lot of notes. I will go through them again and again, and I know we will book another date. So maybe the same person, Olale, you can give a vote of thanks. It's already 8:15, and then we can have someone pray for us and close.